Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do for low end casting is set your tension knob right here. Set your tension knob so there's barely any back and forth. Let me use this hand. Like just barely. What I like to do is the brakes come on the reel, right? So I use the brakes. Right now I'm at about 60% or so, but you're going to want to start at max. And a lot of times what can happen is your lure can hook. I'm right-handed, so my lure kind of wants to hook left. That's why I generally see if there's too much brake. But this lure is heavy enough, so it's probably not going to do that. But it's good to start out heavier. So once you cast a couple times, keep into account the wind and stuff, then you can just slowly back it down. And don't think that you're a bad caster because you have to use more brakes. It's just that's how your casting motion is. And well, I almost felt like I was getting bites there for a second. But I know it's shallow over there. But that's generally how you do it. You just keep backing it down just a couple clicks at a time. See, now I know that my line's getting a little loose at the end of the cast. See, I got a couple little loops there. So two things you do there. You either start using your thumb or use a little bit more brakes. I prefer to use more brakes just because when it's cold outside, you can't use your freaking thumb anyway. But another thing too is you want your lure to load your rod up a little bit. Now this is a little bit of a different rod, like it's kind of acts like a faster action at first. See that? And then it bends down. So so when I get it whipping, see that little, my thumb's on the spool. That really gets your rod going, just a little roll cast like that, so you can do it either way. But that's what's gonna really make the big difference with the light stuff, is your rod loading up. Now if you try to force your rod to load up by just whipping it, your spool, the brakes are so delicate with the BFS stuff that you're just going to overpower them and you're going to backlash every time. So that's a big thing. Like if you've ever seen with my that Surinora rod I use with my Aldebaran, that's a prime example, and I will get to that. But that's a prime example of your rod loading up making a big difference. All right, so when I'm talking about with the rod loading, let me go right here. So when you have the lure, it wants to bounce a little bit. So I'll do it like this. See, it adds a little bit of a bounce there. That's good because you know your rod's going to load up. Another thing, any BFS rod's really going to bend down low just because it's such light power, but with a reasonable amount of force, just pull it down and see what that taper's like. So that's pretty moderate. I don't know if you can really see that. Oh, let me tighten up this drag, my bad. I did swap out the drag star for a smaller one because my hand kept hitting it. But that's a pretty moderate rod. So under normal casting, I'm going to get a lot of help from the rod. So that's good. That's another thing I check for. See that? It's easy to dance around with that weight. That's what you're looking for. Now if we go over to the water, I have a decent drop rate. My brakes are on tighter than I normally would have, just so I don't blow it up. And then you're just going to kind of walk your brakes down. So you go, cast it out there, like, oh, wow, that was pretty good. There's a little bit of a wind too. I got some crosswind here. So now, my tension knob is just so there's no side-to-side play right now. I'm going to play with the brakes. I'm going to take it down 2 notches because it's pretty easy for me to do that. I usually suggest doing 1 notch at a time. Cast it out there. It's still a predictable trajectory. It's going where it needs to go. No concerns there. And now what I like to do is always push it to the limit during the testing. So I'll just keep going. Let me get one more here. I'll just keep going until my reel starts to fluff up. So that way I know how temperamental it is with certain lures. Because sometimes you'll go from like being, like what I find with a lot of linear magnetic braking systems, like not quite like how the Alphas is, like the Airstream Custom, but like how some of Boo Garcia reels, how they have like those round magnets like on the side plate. I find that sometimes you get to like it's a little over braked, and you do one click, and then it's not braked enough. So, and as you can see, I got a little bit of an arc in my line there, which isn't bad, but that's kind of letting you know that your lure is taking out, my bad, your spool is pushing out just a little bit more line than your lure is taking out. So that means you're getting kind of close. So again, I will click another break off. So I know where my functional level is right now. I know it's, I gotta check for ice real quick. Yeah, I got a little bit of ice. Ice will definitely cut down your distance and increase your chance of backlashes tremendously. So you keep going. Okay, I'm kind of hitting that point where I know it's kind of the reel's limit. And then I back off one. Well, put like a little bit more break on, depending on how you are. But how I like to do it, I will generally want my reel to be a little bit more braked and not backlash, versus getting an extra like 2 feet and having the risk of backlash all the time. Because when you're trout fishing, you get 1, maybe 2 shots at a fish. So you can't be spending your time, you cast and you're picking out a backlash and all this crap and you miss. Because those brook trout, a lot of times they'll hit it and drop it right away. So you got to be quick on the hook set. And if you got a bunch of line out, especially you got trees and brush around, you have extra line out, you're just giving yourself a headache. So make sure you always work within your limits. It's not like you're bad at casting, anything like that. It's just that's how it is. That's generally how I do casting those like sub 3 gram lures. Now if you're even lighter, sometimes your lure is going to want to hook out to the left. Like if I'm right-handed, if you're left-handed casting, I bet it's going to hook over to the right. And what I mean by that is, let me over brake it. That generally means like you're over braking with the light stuff. It does a little bit, but this rod loads up so good with this lure that it's not really going to happen. But generally, if it's either you're over braked, or your rod, I gotta get ice off there, or your rod doesn't really load with the lure. And what I mean by it's hooking into your follow through is that the lure's not getting flicked out there by your rod. Your rod's just it's too stiff, and it kind of just pushes it out there like that. Like it'll like kind of sling like that to the left. It usually doesn't backlash. It's just, that's how it is. So I gotta get some. Since the sun went away, my guides are icing up. Okay, so I can determine, I'm pretty sure, I'm guessing it's not the rod right there, because the rod loads pretty good. So what I'm going to do is loosen my brakes. Loosen my tension knob a little bit. This is all ice. And then try that out. Okay, that works pretty good. Now I could probably do a little bit off of it. And I'm going to be kind of conservative too, because I'm getting ice on my guides, and that will make your spool blow up, because there's so much restriction and your spool wants to keep going, it just doesn't. That's why I'm using a slightly heavier lure than I'd normally be using. And then from here you can kind of work out your from your brakes. So now I'm just loosen a little bit. There. So that's it if you're getting like it hooks over to the side. If you're getting a lot of backlashes at the end of your cast, a lot of times if you're using a a less aerodynamic lure, like say a crankbait, or like those fluffy jigs that like I was talking about for bluegill on Instagram, you're going to want to either start using your thumb a little bit more near the end of the cast. And with BFS, it just takes a smidge, just one little tap will fix it. And like you'll see your line will bow a little bit, and once it starts doing that, a little tiny tap will take that away. And if it continues to do that, up your brakes just a little bit, because it's not, your tension knob can also do it, because like your tension knob will give you constant braking, but I'd suggest working with your